Hello and welcome. Today we are taking a look at the NERF N-Series Shadow Storm. Now this is kind of an interesting blaster because not only is it a 6-in-1, which essentially means it's the N-Series Retaliator or Recon, but the Shadow Storm itself is actually an 8-round internal magazine blaster. So kind of like the Modulus Shadow ICS-6, I think that blaster was called, or the old Dart Tag Speedload 6. Of course, it's probably going to be using a significantly different mechanism, but the fact that it's an internal magazine pistol is really cool. Let's jump right in to the Shadow Storm. Now, included in the box, we of course have the Shadow Storm itself. We have the barrel. We have the stock. We have a sight piece. We get 24 darts, which I think is really great considering the blaster only holds 8. And of course, we get the instructions. Now let's go over the blaster. Starting off, we actually have a surprisingly comfortable grip. I definitely like it. On the blaster itself, we have 2 rails, one on the left and one on the right. But we also have a single rail on the barrel with 2 individual locking points. And I almost missed it, we also have one on the bottom of the barrel. On the first locking point on this barrel, I do have the included sight piece, which is pretty plain, but it does have some crosshairs in there. We don't really have too many dedicated sling mounts, except maybe this part on the stock. Speaking of the stock, this is the stock. We have a button on top for the release, and it's like some of the other N-Series stocks where it does lock from the top. So when you actually put pressure on the stock, it's actually a superior design in my opinion, because instead of having it lock down here where you're going to have more of a gap on top, putting it on top makes a more secure connection when it comes to actually shouldering the blaster. That being said, if you were to put this stock on a standard blaster, it would have to go on upside down. But the actual stock attachment point has a lock for both positions, so not only can you put any other stock on this blaster, but you can also put the included stock on upside down. Not that that's important, just pointing it out. Now right up front, we do of course have the barrel, and unfortunately, while it acts just like an N-Strike barrel where you twist and pull, and it looks practically identical, it is actually not compatible with an N-Strike barrel. That's a huge bummer, and I was really disappointed when I found that out. I brought this Storm Charge barrel because I thought it would look really good with the Shadow Storm, and it definitely does not work. I understand that most N-Strike barrels are not going to accommodate the N-Series dart, but I think it's still a big bummer because the size is really close. This barrel is just ever so slightly bigger. Now, if we do remove these attachments, the Shadow Storm itself is actually a really compact, nice 8-round blaster. Like I said, I really enjoy the way the grip feels, and while the included stock is quite short, you can totally put on whatever you want. Now on the left side of the blaster, we do have the reprime switch, so if we were to prime the blaster and encounter some kind of jam, this switch unlocks the priming handle so you can deal with any jam. The plastic quality is very much in line with the other N-Series blasters. It's not the best, it's not terrible. I will say a couple spots on the Shadow Storm, particularly this spot right here, are a little bit flexy, subpar to most of the other N-Series blasters. But overall, it's like that interesting plastic. It doesn't really creak. It feels pretty secure, but it is thin in a couple of places. Now, like a Mega Magnus or most of the internal magazine springers, this blaster is quite easy to load. You simply pull the priming handle back and our loading bay is right here. Loading in the darts is as easy as pushing them right down, and the Shadow Storm happens to have a very smooth loading system. Now let's put the Shadow Storm over the chronograph. We will of course be using the brand new included N1 darts. We're gonna do 4 shots with the barrel and 4 shots without to see if there's a big difference. 80, 79, 80, and 77. That's pretty okay N-Series performance. Now let's take the barrel off and see if that makes any difference. 75, duplicate 75, 76, and 78. Seems like it's actually getting better performance with the barrel. Let's try that again. 83. Take the barrel off. 78, 80, 82. It must have been the darts or something, but for a second I thought that the barrel was actually somehow helping the performance. But it does seem to fire about the same, even if there is, you know, a 5 FPS difference occasionally. You really shouldn't notice that in the actual firing performance. Being an N-Series blaster in the casual space, I am satisfied with that performance. We are having some wind, but we are going to fire the Shadow Storm downrange. That performance did seem kind of erratic. Part of that could be the wind, and part of that could just be that this blaster is an N-Series Springer, which tend to be pretty hit or miss. Now let's put on the barrel just to see if there's any difference. That veered way to the left. Same with that one. The wind is definitely causing issues for the Shadow Storm. Overall though, despite the wind, I would say this is very average N-Series performance. Not terrible, not exceptional. So what are my final thoughts on the N-Series Shadow Storm? The Shadow Storm is kind of an interesting blaster. I like that it's kind of acting as the retaliator of the N-Series line, especially because they didn't just go the route of making it another magazine-fed Springer, but actually giving it an internal magazine. That gives it a certain uniqueness. I personally think that it's pretty disappointing that the barrel is not N-Strike compatible, but if I were to run this blaster in a casual situation, I think I would just completely drop the barrel and stock. I think that the Shadow Storm itself is a really nice size, it has a really comfortable grip, and a great capacity for an internal magazine blaster. Performance is average, but as a kind of gimmicky blaster, I didn't expect anything beyond that. So while I don't think the Shadow Storm will necessarily work for everyone, especially if you don't run the N-Series darts, but I think if you want to try an N-Series blaster and you want something small with a nice capacity that you can reload on the fly, the Shadow Storm might be a great option. It's also nice that you do get some tactics with this blaster, even if not everything is compatible with what we have. If you are interested in the Shadow Storm, I will have the link in my description. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on the N-Series Shadow Storm. Subscribe for more, have a good one, and happy blasting.